This will be the beginning of the deposition of Nathan Alger. It is January 10th, 2018. The time is 2:14 p.m. and we're on the record. This is the case of Jesse Williams versus Grand Traverse Counties for the state of Michigan in the 13th Circuit Court. Case number 1732326CZ. Now the attorneys will identify themselves and whom they represent, and the court reporter will swear in the witness.
Josh Blanchard on behalf of the plaintiff, Jesse Williams.
Greg Grant on behalf of the defendant.
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony about to give shall be nothing but the whole truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state your full name
Nathan Alger,
and spell Alger for me.
Alger.
Have you ever given deposition testimony before?
Yes, sir.
When was that?
Years ago.
How many times?
4 or 5.
Okay. What kind of matters?
Accidents, jail deaths, FOIA.
You've testified in a FOIA deposition
Sure
before?
have.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. You probably know the ground rules, but I'm going to go over them just to be sure. I'm going to ask questions, you're going to answer them. If your lawyer has an objection, he'll lodge the objection. Unless he tells you not to answer the question, you still have to answer it. You don't need to wait for him to say to answer it. You'll need to not answer if he tells you not to. Does that make sense?
Correct.
I'm going to ask you questions. If you answer them, I'm going to assume that you heard my question and understood it.
All right.
If you don't hear my question or don't understand the question, let me know, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. You're employed as the undersheriff for Grand Traverse County, correct?
Yes.
How long have you been employed as the undersheriff?
15 years.
Prior to being undersheriff, you worked as a police officer, I assume.
Yes.
Your role as undersheriff is primarily administrative and managerial, correct?
Yes.
You're not, well, perhaps you could arrest people. You're not often out making arrests and doing investigations, right?
That is accurate.
Okay. And you have oversight both over the sheriff's office and the jail division, correct?
Objective Foundation.
The jail is part of the sheriff's office, and I oversee the jail as part of my responsibilities.
Thank you. You have oversight over the jail division, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you're aware that we're here related to a Freedom of Information Act request that was filed by Jesse Williams with the sheriff's office, correct?
Yes.
You're aware that was back in August of 2017?
Yes.
After the request was received by your office, a partial denial was issued by Ms. Fountain, is that true?
Yes.
Subsequent to that, your office received an appeal from Mr. Williams, correct?
Yes.
And you responded in a letter to Mr. Williams' appeal, correct?
No.
You did not?
I signed a letter.
I see. Okay, so the appeal came back with a letter bearing your signature,
Yes,
correct?
correct.
But that's not your letter?
I did not author it, no.
Who authored that letter?
Christopher Forsyth,
Who is Christopher Forsyth?
Deputy Civil Counsel for Grand Traverse County.
How did he come to author that letter?
We received the appeal, and throughout this process, through both the FOIA for Mr. Williams and the FOIA for the Record Eagle specific to this matter, we had many conversations with Mr. Forsyth about the information that was going to be given. So when the appeal came, I've never dealt with an appeal previously, so I sought counsel.
And do I understand correctly that Mr. Forsyth is the county's chief FOIA officer?
That is correct.
And so when he drafted that letter, he was acting in the capacity of the chief FOIA officer?
Well, I don't know how he was acting. He responded to the appeal and asked that our captain sign it. Our captain did not feel comfortable because he didn't understand the entire process, so I signed it instead.
Who is the captain that he wanted to sign it?
Captain Randy Fulis of the Investigative Services Division.
Okay. Help me understand the sort of org chart for the sheriff's office.
Specific to FOIA? Please.
No, not yet, but I'll ask that in a second. We've got sheriff is your boss, right?
Yes.
And you're number 2?
Yes.
Captain Randy Fulis.
Yes.
Spell Fulis for me.
Fewless.
He is under you?
Correct.
Is he a direct report to you?
Yes.
Are there other captains at the sheriff's office on his level?
Yes.
Who are those?
Captain Christopher Clark, he is in charge of our Field Services Division, which is the law enforcement, excuse me, the law enforcement division, and then Captain Todd Ritter is the captain of the jail division, also known as a jail administrator.
So are each of the captains on the same level but handling different divisions?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you know, what was it expressed to you why Mr. Forsyth wanted the captain of the Investigative Services Division to sign the letter?
Yes.
Why was that?
Captain Fulis has historically been the first upward go-to captain for FOIA. I've always been kind of a secondary level to him. So historically, if there's a question specific to FOIA, Captain Fulis was our first go-to. Captain Meacham, previous to him, of the Investigative Services Division, was also the one that oversaw FOIA initially.
So Captain Fulis oversees FOIA.
Yes.
He's in between Miss Fountain and you in terms of oversight?
It's, I don't know if it's an in-between or not, but Captain Fulis and I both interact with Miss Fountain routinely. Captain Fulis has been was the first person that she was to go to prior to this new arrangement of her being deemed the FOIA coordinator. So she either comes to myself or Captain Fulis equally.
And did you speak to Captain Fulis about why he didn't want to sign the
Yes.
FOIA appeal determination?
My apologies. Yes, I did.
And what did he tell you about that?
He had not had any part of that process because it was a FOIA for jail records. Captain Fulis didn't have a lot to do with the redaction end of it nor the compilation of the records. So he did not feel as comfortable as I did signing the letter from Mr. Forsyth.
Have you had training regarding the Freedom of Information Act?
Yes, I have.
When did you receive training?
Years ago, and it's been intermittent. Maybe 3 to 4 different trainings over the years.
When was the last time you
It's
received
been a
training?
while.
Okay. So you received the FOIA appeal on or about September 13, 2017. Does that sound right?
I don't know the date. I can't recall the date.
Would it refresh your recollection to look at the FOIA appeal?
Sure. Yep. That's,
September 13th?
That's what I saw, yes.
And when did you respond to it? If you need some help, you can turn a couple pages and find your response.
The letter dated September 21st, 2017.
Prior to, after September 13, 2017, and prior to September 21, 2017, what steps did you take in order to resolve the appeal?
We received the appeal. Ms. Fountain and I met in my office and talked about the appeal, and we both decided that we should speak with Mr. Forsyth about the appeal, and we did that. We talked several times. I think we met at least once specific to the information contained in the letter of the appeal.
Did you review the documents that had been requested in the August 2017 FOIA request from Mr. Williams?
I reviewed some of them, but I did not review all of them.
So you're aware that in response to the FOIA request, the sheriff's office granted parts of it and denied parts of it, correct?
I am aware of that.
You're aware that they denied some parts in whole, and in some parts they redacted information, correct?
I am aware of that.
Did you review the information that had been redacted from the documents that were provided?
Some of the documents I did review and some I did not.
Which ones did you review?
There's a lot of documents.
Specifically, there was a mission team investigation, correct?
Correct.
Mission team investigations are conducted by sheriff's deputies from other counties through the Sheriff's Association to help out on investigations of internal matters, correct?
Yes.
Sort of like an internal affairs division through the Sheriff's Association.
Yes.
And the sheriff requested a mission team investigation of the death of Mr. Holloway, correct?
Yes.
And there was a report generated by a couple deputies from another county, correct?
An undersheriff and a jail administrator, yes.
And you received that report?
Yes.
Did you review the redacted portions before issuing the determination on Mr. Williams' appeal of September 21, 2017?
Not in their entirety. We had a conversation about what content could and could not be redacted. I did not redact any document, nor did I see the redacted documents.
Okay, and so I'm going to show you a mission team investigation number 57-17. It's dated as submitted August 23, 2017. I'd like you to take a look at that document.
The whole thing?
Yeah. I guess before you go through the whole thing, you have seen a mission team investigation with the state before?
Clarify your
report?
question?
Have you seen a report from those officers with that date before?
I reviewed the mission team investigation into the death of Alan Holloway.
Okay, go ahead and look through the entire document.
Okay. Just,
Do you want him to read the entire thing, or?
If he needs to, I'm going to ask him if it's the mission team investigation that was conducted into the death of, mission team investigation report that was conducted into the death of Alan Holloway.
If you can testify that that's the exact
I can't
document.
I can't tell you that in pure recall of the previous.
I'd like you to go ahead and look through the whole thing.
There are notes on it. Are those?
They came from your client.
Okay.
That was number 5 to our FOIA request.
Okay. I just want to make sure that there were no, I saw some notes on it. I didn't know if they were your notes or.
I think we don't know yet. That's what testimony's for.
So what is your question again, sir?
Let me retrieve the exhibit from you first.
Okay.
We're going to have to do this a different way.
Okay.
I've marked this as 1.
Okay.
That document, have you seen anything before that looks similar to it?
It appears as though this is a redacted copy of the MSA investigation.
Okay. When you say the MSA, that's the same thing as the
Michigan
mission
Sheriff's
team?
Association investigation team.
Okay. Did you ever see a copy of the response to Mr. Williams' August 2017 FOIA request?
As I stated previously, I saw pieces of it. I did not see the redacted copy of this document prior to it departing.
Okay. And I want to direct your attention specifically to, the pages aren't numbered, but there is a page that at the top says interview with, oh, I'm sorry, it does say 20 right below the redaction.
Right.
Page 20 at the top of it, it says interview with Curtis
Grandstaff.
Grandstaff. And then below that, there is something that says interview with an inmate, is that correct?
That's what it says.
And then there's a redaction following it?
Yes.
And then there's a large redaction following it, correct?
Yes.
Do you know whether the first redaction following the interview inmate is the inmate's name?
I would assume it's the inmate's name. In fact, I recall that's exactly how they structured the mission investigation.
Okay.
When they interviewed inmates, they put interview inmate last name.
And then the large redaction there would be the substance of the interview with the inmate, correct?
I would assume that is the case, yes.
Well, that's how they structured the report,
That's
right?
correct.
Based on your resolution of the appeal, what is the basis for redacting the statement of the inmate?
What I was told when we spoke about the information that was denied, I was informed that this either was personal or private and embarrassing information, or information that led to the names of other inmates inside the jail. So they redacted the content of the interview with the inmate.
Did you verify if that's true?
I didn't verify that that was true. That's what they told me they did.
If information in that large redacted block of the inmate's statement would lead to the names of another inmate, would do that by mentioning their names?
Yes.
So you could just redact their names, right?
You could.
What sort of embarrassing information could be contained within that?
I don't know. That's what I was told was the reason for the redactions.
Do you know the nature of the information that was contained within the redaction on page 20 of the MSA investigation that is, as you say, embarrassing?
No, I don't.
So you signed a denial of Mr. Williams' appeal without reviewing the items that you were withholding.
Mr. Forsyth reviewed this information with Ms. Fountain and I believe Captain Ritter. They did the redactions. I did not.
Were you present when that happened?
No. Now, I was at a meeting with Mr. Forsyth when we talked about the appeal, yes. I did not review this document with Mr. Forsyth.
Why didn't Mr. Forsyth sign the letter if he made the decision?
I believe that Mr. Forsyth wanted the appeal. The appeal was filed to us in our office, and he wanted Ms. Fountain's supervisor to do the letter.
Do you know why?
That would be a natural progression of appeal.
So, there were, in the denial, essentially a number of categories of items that you denied and you gave a basis for, correct?
Correct.
And one of the things that you denied access to was information related to the names of jail inmates. Is that correct?
Yes.
People that are housed within the Grand Traverse County Jail have either been charged with a crime, convicted of a crime, or arrested on a warrant for contempt of court, correct?
Correct.
You don't house people in the Grand Traverse County Jail that you believe to be innocent of crimes.
Well, we house people in the Grand Traverse County Jail that are there for civil offenses such as child support, things of that nature, but those are court-ordered warrants.
And you understand that child support is a contempt of court issue,
Yes,
correct?
contempt of court, that's correct.
And you understand that contempt of court is a misdemeanor punishable by up to 93 days in jail, a fine of up to $7,500, correct?
I'll have to take your word for it.
Okay. So the people, by and large, that are housed in the jail are people that have been accused of a crime or convicted of a crime.
Or court-ordered into custody, yes.
Fair enough. Those people, even the people that you're saying are there on child support warrants, they've done something that society deems inappropriate, correct?
The court deems inappropriate, yes.
Well, do you think society believes parents should support their children?
I don't know that he can testify as to what society believes. I object to the foundation, but
I don't think
we get your point.
the society doesn't sign fail to appear warrants, the judge does.
I understand that. Do you think society, is it a common societal norm in Grand Traverse County that you should support your children?
Sure.
Okay. Does the law require you to support your children?
Sure.
Do people get arrest warrants for fail to support their children when they have actually supported their children?
I don't think so.
Okay. So the people that are in there that you know about are people accused of crimes? That's one category, right? Mm-hmm. Is that a yes?
Yes. Yep.
Making a record. People that have been convicted of crimes,
Yes.
and people that haven't supported their kids.
Yes.
Are there any other categories that you guys hold?
I'm sure there are. I can't think of any right now, but
If you think of some, come,
All right.
just blurt it out, okay?
all right.
All right. So, is it the position of the Grand Traverse County Sheriff's Office that individuals who have been charged with crimes are entitled to keep that matter private?
To a degree,
What degree?
historically, we have a policy that prior to the first official court action, we do not release names of people arrested unless it's a major societal concern or obvious public issue that was known by the community.
So, wait, are you saying that it's the policy of the sheriff's office that you wouldn't release the name of someone arrested until they had been arraigned?
The first major court action, yes.
And so you wouldn't, for example, if you had someone arrested on a warrant in another county, you wouldn't announce that until the person had been arraigned?
We don't typically announce that.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification in the sheriff's deposition as Exhibit 3. Do you recognize that?
It's our Facebook page.
What is that about?
It's an arrest for a warrant for Neil Anthony Brown.
Who is Neil Anthony Brown?
He's a 27-year-old Kingsley man.
What day was that posted on?
December 8th.
Where was Mr. Brown at the time the sheriff's office posted that?
Bay City.
So you guys had him arrested in Bay City. He hadn't made it back to Grand Traverse, and you posted on Facebook that you had him arrested and charged with child abuse?
As I stated a minute ago, unless it's a major community concern, and this may have been a follow-up to a prior news request.
Okay.
So I don't know what that, I didn't do that, but it could have been something the news was inquiring about previously.
How about Exhibit 4 from Sheriff Bensley's deposition? What's that?
Again, it's our Facebook page.
It's a post about someone else that had been accused of a crime?
Yep,
And you posted his name
yes,
and what he was charged with?
yes,
And you posted it on Facebook so anyone could see it?
yep,
You also, your office holds daily press briefings, correct?
that's correct.
You invite the media in and you tell them all the good work you've done.
Well, not all the good work we
You
do.
tell them some of the good work you've done, right?
Yeah, we do.
You
And
tell
some
them-
of the bad.
You tell them about the arrests you've made
Some,
and the charges that have been issued.
again, some.
How do you make the determination of when you disclose and when you don't?
It's a ca-
I'll object to the form vague. If you can answer that.
Again, I stated previously, case-by-case basis, but if the news is asking us questions like the child abuse, they knew about that investigation. They were inquiring about it ahead of the gentleman's arrest. So we were following up with the news with that press release.
So you'll disclose things if the news asks?
We'll disclose, we will publish things as a follow-up to news inquiries, yes.
Okay, so is that the standard operating procedure then? If the news asks, you'll disclose information if they make a specific request?
That's not the standard operating procedure at all.
What's the policy or the way in which you determine whether you will disclose or won't disclose something on request of a news agency?
Again, it's a case-by-case situation. If the investigation is going to be impacted by the release of the information, we will not release it.
Okay. What about on privacy grounds? Does that ever factor in or not?
It does. The whole thing does. Everything is considered.
So what are the standards you use to determine whether releasing someone's name would be an unwarranted invasion of their personal privacy?
It's a case-by-case situation.
Okay, what factors do you consider?
Will the release of the information impede the investigation, if there is an investigation ongoing, or if it's an unwarranted invasion of somebody's privacy?
So those are two different exceptions, right? But my question is, how do you determine, can you point to a factor that you consider in determining whether something is an unwarranted invasion of privacy versus whether it's not?
Age of the victim, type of the complaint.
Age of the victim would tell you whether disclosing the name of the accused is an invasion of privacy?
Again, I said it's a case-by-case basis with all information being considered.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I didn't mean to cut off your list of factors if you want to continue.
It's a case-by-case situation. And we determine based on the information we have if it's an unnecessary invasion of someone's privacy or if it will impede the investigation. I'm speaking specifically about information released to the news. That was your question.
Mm-hmm. So do you judge by different standards what you release to a citizen versus what you release to the news?
Again, it's a case-by-case situation.
Okay. And what I need to know from you is, do you categorically treat the news different than you categorically treat private citizens?
No.
Okay. You didn't rely upon interfering with an investigation here, correct? That wasn't one of your bases for refusing to release information, right?
Here, what are you referring to? The Holloway?
The Freedom of Information Act
No, that was
request
not the
that formed
case.
the basis
The
for this lawsuit.
investigation was done.
Okay. And so it was only about unwarranted invasion of personal privacy when you refused to release the names of the jail inmates, correct?
I did not redact the information, but that's what they told me they considered in the redactions.
So you signed the letter from the sheriff's office.
I did.
You're the number 2 at the sheriff's office.
I am.
The sheriff, assume he testified he didn't really know much about this. Mm-hmm. That would mean that if you take my statement as true, that would mean you're the most knowledgeable person there, right?
I don't think I'm the most knowledgeable person there.
Do you often sign letters about subject matter you don't know anything about?
Well, I know about it. I didn't write it.
Okay.
We relied on Mr. Forsyth. Mr. Forsyth penned the letter.
So, the jail inmate names. You redacted every jail inmate name who witnessed Mr. Holloway's death, correct?
I'm going to object. He didn't redact anything, but
Yeah, that's fair. The sheriff's office collectively redacted the inmate names of the people who witnessed Mr. Holloway's death, correct?
Well, I don't know that anybody witnessed Mr. Holloway's death.
We'll make it more general. In response to the Freedom of Information Act request, you redacted all of the inmate names.
I would think that would be fair to say, yes.
Okay. And you did that because the sheriff's office did that because it claimed that it would be embarrassing for people to be identified as having either been accused of a crime or jailed, correct?
Yes.
What factors did you rely upon to make that determination in this case?
I didn't do any of the redactions, so I don't know which specific factors they were considering when they redacted the information.
Yeah, and when I'm speaking about you, I'm sort of speaking about the corporate you collectively because you signed a letter on behalf of the sheriff's office. I apologize. When the sheriff's office did that, what factors did the sheriff's office rely upon to sustain the exemption based on invasion of personal privacy?
I'll just place a foundation objection. You can answer to the extent you know.
What I was explained, it was explained to me that the fact that they were in jail at the time and that on various types of charges and for various reasons they were being jailed, that they felt that it was an embarrassing situation to have their names released publicly.
Are you familiar with a program called Mobile Patrol?
I think I've heard of it.
Are you aware that it's an app where you can see mug shots and names of everyone in the jail?
Objective Foundation.
I don't know that.
Okay. Are you familiar with VineLink?
No.
Okay. Your office regularly sends out mug shots with press releases, right?
Yes.
And that identifies people in the jail, right?
Yep.
And it shows their mug shot, right?
It identifies people that have been arrested.
And people that are arrested are in the jail.
Not necessarily.
At some point they are, right?
For a brief period of time or up to months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it identifies people who have been in the jail, right?
Yes.
Okay. And it shows their mug shots.
Yes.
Some mug shots are kind of embarrassing looking, right?
Yes.
Some people come in rough shape to the jail, right?
Yes.
And sometimes they're beat up.
Yes.
Sometimes they're just really intoxicated.
Yes.
Sometimes they're dressed funny.
Yep.
These are all things you've seen as a police officer, right?
Yes.
All of those can be embarrassing, right?
Yes.
You don't engage in a balancing test every time you release a mugshot to determine whether the mugshot's embarrassing.
Nope.
Can you point to any facts to support your claim that releasing the names would be embarrassing, other than the fact that the people were in jail?
That was the only explanation I received as far as the redaction of the name, so no, I cannot.
I keep asking you questions that you're answering with, someone else made the decision. Is it fair to say that this decision was not yours?
It was a collective decision, that's correct.
Well, do you feel like you had input into the decision?
We did have input, but when the Chief Civil Counsel of Grand Traverse County gives us direction, we follow it. We had input,
Okay.
we had discussions, but he gave the direction, and I signed the letter.
Did you agree with his opinion?
We have so many discussions where there's both agreement and disagreement. I can't remember to what end I agreed with his opinions and to what end I did not.
Do you think that the names of inmates should be released as a matter of course?
No.
Do you think that photographs of inmates should be released as a matter of course?
No. But we have a practice, and we follow our practice as best we can in terms of releasing mugshots.
Is the practice reduced to writing in the form of a policy or procedure?
I don't think so. It's just an agreement between the prosecutor's office and the sheriff's office to make sure that the person has an official court appearance prior to releasing a mugshot of a person that was arrested, because we could mistakenly arrest somebody and put the information out that would be inaccurate. That's the practice.
You denied some documents based on the frank communication exception to FOIA, correct?
Yes.
And what documents were withheld pursuant to that exemption?
Emails?
How many?
I don't know.
Between who were the emails sent?
Various people, corrections officers, county officials,
Okay. Which
not-
corrections officers do you know were involved?
all the corrections officers that were listed. We reviewed all of their emails. We collectively reviewed all of their emails to make sure that there was no frank communication between the parties that could not be released.
When did you review all of the corrections officers' emails?
Subsequent to the FOIA?
And you withheld all of them?
No.
Okay. With regard to the ones that were withheld, which officers were involved?
I can't recall.
Did you send any emails that were withheld?
I was part of an email chain that was withheld.
Okay. Who was involved in that email chain?
Myself, Sheriff Bensley, and Mr. Menzel, and I think Mr. Hendry.
Who is Mr. Henry?
He was the County Human Resources Director.
Is that Hendry?
Yes, I believe that is correct.
And when were these emails sent?
During the mission investigation,
Before it was final?
Oh, yes.
And after the death?
yes.
And did you send some of the emails as well as receive emails?
I sent the original email. There were responses to the email, yes.
So you initiated the email,
Yes.
and it was to Mr.
Henry and Mr. Menzel.
And then how was the sheriff involved?
Well, I think I CC'd him, but Mr. Menzel, I believe, replied to that email.
Okay, so you emailed Mr. Menzel and Mr. Henry, and then carbon copied the sheriff.
I think that's how it went, yes.
And do you recall what the subject line of the email was?
I don't know if there was a subject line.
Okay. Do you recall what the subject matter of the email was?
Certainly.
What was the, without telling me the content of the email, what was the subject matter?
Counsel, legal counsel?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's kind of a tough question to answer.
that's fair. So it's either been, I'll wait for an objection from Mr. Grant if he wants to lodge it. It's either been reported publicly or disclosed in the FOIA that someone from the sheriff's office requested appointment of counsel for the sheriff's office, and that someone at county administration had reached out to Cummings McClory about that. Let me get my question out, and then you can object
I'm
if you want
waiting.
to.
Yeah.
Is that the email chain we're talking about?
No, sir. I'm sorry, I should
I was going to object to Forum Foundation, and it's a misstatement of fact within the question, but
Well, okay,
go ahead,
resolve the issue.
go ahead.
Would you like me to answer that?
Well, I think you did. You said no.
Okay. That was not the email I was referring to.
Okay. Okay. So now the email that you sent, though, was not sent to any lawyers, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So you weren't seeking legal advice on that email, correct? You
I was
weren't-
not.
Okay. You weren't seeking the advice from a lawyer
I
in
was
that
not.
email? Okay. Were you requesting something in the email?
Yes.
When the decision was made to deny disclosure of that email based on the frank communication exception, did you or are you aware of anyone attempting to redact the email to provide any parts that were not exempt from disclosure?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. When the decision, it was a long question. When the decision was made to refuse to disclose that email chain under the frank communications exception, are you aware of whether you or anyone else attempted to separate the exempt and the non-exempt information?
I don't think there was any separation of material there. The entire email was rather frank, inflammatory in some respects, and there was less than purely factual information contained inside the letter, so we withheld the entire email.
Yeah. I can appreciate that that was your decision in the end. My question is, did anyone attempt to separate the information?
We looked at it at length and determined that the whole thing should be exempt.
Okay. Fair to say that if you had disclosed to my client that an email was sent between yourself, Menzel, Hendry, and the sheriff, that wouldn't tell us what the nature of the frank communication was, correct?
That's correct.
If you had disclosed the date on which it was sent and the time, that wouldn't disclose the nature of the content of the frank communication, correct?
That's correct.
If you had disclosed the subject line, if there was one, that wouldn't have disclosed to us the nature of the frank communication.
Well,
correct.
object to form and foundation of that. Go ahead.
This email was not, it was, when the request was made and we did the searches, this email was not found subsequent to the search done with the information requested by the FOIA. It did not mention anything surrounding the information that was requested. So it did not hit the filter.
Okay, but it does relate to Halloway.
It sure does.
It's responsive to the FOIA request.
Yeah, so it didn't come, the guidelines were, when we plugged in the information to IT, that email did not come up.
But you were aware of it and you denied
Yeah.
disclosure on the basis of frank communication, right?
Yeah, oh, yes. So I'm trying to think of why when you're asking me why we didn't put that email out there, it was not specific to Halloway. It was for another reason.
Okay. Can you elaborate on what
Well,
you
it was just,
for another reason?
There was discussion about should we even include this letter because it didn't fall into the request.
Okay, but you made a decision that you should, and then you should exempt it.
On that one particular email, but there were a lot of emails that were asked for that fell into the request that we also did redact some information from them.
Are you aware of how many times prior the sheriff's office has denied a FOIA request based on frank communication?
I'm not.
Are you aware of whether it's ever happened before?
I'm sure that it has.
Are you aware of that?
No.
Okay.
Can we take a 2-minute break? Go off the record.
Yeah?
Put out the record, the time is 2:56 p.m. Back on the record, the time is 2:58.
With the FOIA response and your response to the appeal, are you aware that no affidavits were supplied by the sheriff's office?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Okay,
Where
let me rephrase it. Are you aware that no employees of the sheriff's office provided affidavits supporting the claimed exemptions in response to Mr. Williams' FOIA request and appeal?
I'm not aware of that, but I know that I did not fill out an affidavit, and Mr. Forsyth mentioned something to that effect, similar to an affidavit that we should be doing or could be doing. I can't remember the nature of the conversation, but the topic came up.
Okay, so you remember Forsyth suggested that you could or should?
Would, could, should, I can't remember, but I know that there was an issue with the way that we responded. He felt we could have done better. But
Do you think you have a duty to separate exempt and non-exempt information?
yes.
There were documents that you refused to produce pursuant to the exemption under FOIA that allows a public body to withhold documents that would prejudice the public body's ability to maintain the physical security of a penal institution
Yes.
or place of confinement. You're aware of that, right?
Yes.
You're aware that you withheld documents on that basis,
Yes.
specifically videos.
Yes.
I want to talk to you. Well, let's first ask, have you seen the videos from the time that Mr. Halloway died?
Yes.
Have you seen the video that depicts him near the door, motionless, inside his cell for a period of hours?
Yes.
Okay. Have you watched the video in its entirety?
No.
Why not?
Because I have not in my possession a video that is the entire time. The video I have in possession is not that long. And I just don't have not watched a 6-hour video. or
Was
whatever.
was he motionless for 6 hours?
No, there's a whole, the video, he's there for several days. It's very long. How they did it, I did not watch the whole video.
Okay.
I watched the relevant pieces
How did you determine that they were relevant pieces?
because the captain determined which pieces of video I should watch and which ones I shouldn't.
Is this Captain Ritter?
Yes, sir.
Do we know, has Captain Ritter watched the entire video?
I don't know that.
How often do people die in the Grand Traverse County Jail?
Not very many.
mean,
Not
in-
very often.
In the last 10 years, how many deaths have there been?
Years. I'm trying to figure 4 or 5.
Were those all suicides?
No, sir.
How many were suicides?
3.
So 4 were 5, and 3 were suicides to your knowledge. Were any of them homicides?
No, sir.
Okay. So the other 2 were medical or accidental?
Yes, sir.
Do you want to know the cause of someone dying in your jail?
Certainly.
Then why wouldn't you watch the entire video?
We had the state police and the Traverse City Police Department investigate the death of Mr. Halloway. I relied on their reports to tell me what the cause of death was for Mr. Halloway.
Do you think, as the undersheriff, you owe a duty to the inmates in your jail to keep them safe?
Yes, as best we can.
Okay. Do you take that seriously?
Certainly do.
Without getting into the cause of it, while Mr. Halloway was in your jail, he did not remain safe, right? He died.
Object compound.
He did die.
And death is sort of, well, it's something you try and avoid at the jail, right?
We certainly do.
And so the jail was not successful in preventing or avoiding Mr. Halloway's death, whatever the cause may be.
Foreign foundation. Objection.
We were not.
Okay. And you would like to avoid future deaths in your jail.
Certainly.
Whether they be accidental, suicide, homicide, any kind of death you want to avoid, right?
Yes.
But you didn't watch the entire video to see if you could change policies or prevent future deaths?
No.
There was a death in your jail, was it 2013, a suicide?
I don't think there was a suicide in 2013.
When was the last suicide prior to Halloway?
Sarah Clark, and I don't know the number of years, but I think it's in that 10-year time frame.
Okay. Were you the undersheriff then?
Yes, sir.
Did you watch the entire video recording of her death?
There wasn't a video of it.
There was no video recording in the
No,
last... 10 years ago you didn't have video in the jail?
We did.
Why wasn't there a video recording?
She was in the shower.
Did you watch all of the videos that existed?
Some of it, yeah.
So, focusing on the video recording that captures Mr. Halloway inside his jail cell when he dies, okay? Is there one video that captures that or more than one video that captures him inside the cell?
Inside the cell?
Yes.
There is one camera inside the cell.
Okay. So there is a camera inside the cell that records his death.
Yes.
That camera is in one of the corners of the cell, correct?
I'm not sure it's in a corner, but there's one camera in the cell.
It's pointed toward the door.
Sure. Yes.
And it captures on video recording a large portion of the cell, but not the entirety of the cell, correct?
That's correct.
Because there's an area under the camera that it can't record, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All that camera shows is what's going on in the cell, correct?
Yes.
What about disclosing the video from within the cell when Mr. Holloway died would compromise the physical security of the jail?
How the cell is laid out, its relationship to the cameras, where the beds are, where the door is, how the door is set up, the way the pass-throughs are. It could show locking mechanisms, things of that nature.
So now if some of the things you just described are already in the public domain, releasing a video of it doesn't really cause a problem, right?
Objection
does.
foundation. Go ahead. Go ahead.
In my opinion, it does.
Okay. Are you aware that the jail floor plan is in the public domain?
I am now.
When did you become aware of that?
When I got your packet,
You got a packet from me?
Your exhibits.
your exhibits.
A copy of that was sent to you?
Yes, sir.
Not by me though, right?
No, I don't
From
think so.
your lawyer
Yeah,
or someone else?
somebody else, yeah.
Okay. Were you aware that your office was providing that in response to FOIA requests?
Objection foundation.
We don't supply our floor plans based on a FOIA request.
You don't?
To my knowledge, we do not.
Are you familiar with this document? It's marked as Exhibit 1 in Sheriff Bensley's DEP.
I've seen this document.
Okay. Are you aware that that is in the public domain?
Like I said, I am now. We've had conversation about this since receiving the documents.
Are you aware that that document contains within it the floor plans of the jail?
This is not a FOIA request.
My question for you is, are you aware that that contains within it floor plans of the jail?
I know that isn't here, right?
Be clear, you were pointing at
I'm
the
trying to
exhibit
find it.
of the floor plan sitting on the
There are
table?
floor plans here. It says jail first floor plan, jail basement plan.
Okay. Have you ever supplied that document that's marked as Exhibit 1 from Sheriff Bensley's report, or excuse me, deposition? Have you ever supplied that in response to a FOIA request, if you know?
I believe we did. This report, yes.
Okay. You mentioned that, for example, displaying the video might show a locking mechanism, correct? Is that a yes?
Could be, yes.
Taking a record.
Yes.
Or it might show other physical features of the cell that are important to keep secret, right?
Yes.
Now I've never been in your jail, but I assume the cells are rectangular. Is that fair?
I guess.
Okay. I mean, you don't have
Some are, some aren't.
Okay. The cell in question that Mr. Holloway died in, is that rectangular?
Somewhat, yes.
Okay. Other than locking mechanisms, what would be disclosed by the video that's of concern to you?
I object. He gave you an exhaustive list, but
Okay.
asked and answered to some extent. Go ahead.
The relationship of items inside the cell, in addition to the locking mechanisms, the pass-throughs, the windows, the camera angles themselves, what can be seen, where you can hide, where you can't, things like that.
Okay. So, it's not the fact of Mr. Holloway sitting there motionless, dying or dead, that you didn't want to disclose. Is that fair?
That is correct. We
Okay.
denied that based on the reasons given.
So one way to deal with that would be to put black boxes over everything except Mr. Holloway, right? So you could see the video of Mr. Holloway dying and everything else be redacted, right?
Just object to the foundation of that.
I'm not sure we could do that.
You're not sure you couldn't, right?
I personally do not know how to do that.
Okay. But you are aware you've got a duty to separate exempt and non-exempt information.
That's correct.
And you're not claiming that Mr. Holloway's death and leaning against the door that is exempt information.
I'm not claiming that.
And so it would be possible for someone to separate that information at some cost, right?
I'm going to object. There's no foundation for that, but you can answer it.
I don't know what they can and cannot do. We
Did you-
spoke.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
You said we spoke. I'm sorry.
We received counsel from Mr. Forsyth. We talked about the exemption of the video. We determined it was going to be exempt in its entirety for the reasons offered.
Did you look into redacting the video?
We did not.
Does the sheriff's office have body cameras or in-car cameras in their patrol cars?
No, sir.
Neither?
No,
So when a road deputy's out on the side of the road, there's no video of what happens?
that's correct.
Does it ever have video?
No, sir.
Other than Mr. Forsyth and Mr. Grant, have you consulted with anyone regarding your response to Mr. Williams' FOIA appeal?
Did you ask whether he consulted with any attorneys?
No, I said anyone.
Anyone?
Regarding the appeal? No.
Do you know why Mr. Forsyth isn't representing the sheriff's office in this FOIA case?
I think I know, but I'm not 100% certain why he's not.
What's your impression of why?
Because we made the claim through MMRMA, and MMRMA provided us counsel through CMDA.
Seems plausible. Thank you. Are there video cameras within the booking area of your your jail?
Yes.
Was there video that was withheld of Mr. Holloway being booked into the jail?
All of the video surrounding Mr. Holloway and all video requested was denied.
Okay.
So yes.
But I guess my question is, do you have that video of him being booked into the jail?
I'm sure we do, yes. I think I've seen it. I'm not 100% certain I've seen it, but...
Similarly, let me back up. Maybe this isn't true. Are there video cameras in every part of the jail?
No.
Okay. What part? Strike that. There was a deputy corrections officer who was supposed to be doing intermittent checks on Mr. Holloway, correct?
Yes.
Is there a video that depicts where he was at when he was supposed to be doing those checks that he wasn't doing?
The entire jail that those officers are doing rounds in, those areas are on video. They are recorded.
So if I understand the conclusions of the investigation correctly, a deputy corrections officer was supposed to be doing rounds and wasn't doing the rounds. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that would say to me that rather than doing the rounds, the deputy was doing something else. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Where was the deputy when he should have been doing the rounds?
The officers involved in the investigation, they made claims about the reasons they did not do their rounds. Mm-hmm. So they were doing other things inside the jail at the time of the rounds. And yes, if they are in front of a video camera, they would be recorded.
And that has been preserved? There is a central sort of control pod area that has an operator that can open doors and unlock doors and that sort of thing, correct?
Yes.
And in that central area, there are video monitors, correct?
Yes.
They display the contents of the video, the images from the video cameras throughout the jail, correct?
In a loop, yes.
They cycle
Yes.
camera to camera?
Yeah.
There's also like a matrix that shows a bunch of them, correct?
Yes.
And does that matrix also loop?
Well, let me object to, I have concerns about any testimony of how the camera system works. I think that that's getting into a security issue as well. How the cameras operate, I think, is an issue.
Well, I think it's an issue on whether you can uphold your exemption too. So you can direct them to answer how you want, but I mean, this isn't particularly surprising information.
Well,
that
he's
they've got
already answered it
video
about the
monitors.
loop, so just go ahead and continue it.
You have the matrix that displays in smaller format lots of cameras, right?
Yes. So I may have misspoken when I say a loop. That's
Okay.
kind of what I mean. There's multiple images on a screen over multiple screens that the officer watches.
And I guess what I'm asking is, does a camera in any given cell, is it always up on one of those screens?
I don't know that. I think so, but I don't know that. for
In
sure.
the security pod, there's an employee who's supposed to watch those cameras, right?
Yes.
And do you know if there's a camera watching that employee?
No, there's not.
There is no camera in the security pod watching the person who's supposed to watch the cameras.
That's correct.
There wasn't at the time. Is there now?
No.
Okay. We showed Sheriff Binsley a number of photographs that he believed were taken within your jail. If you would just flip through them.
All right. Okay.
Do you have any idea where those photos came from?
I do not.
Do you know who took them?
I do not.
Have you ever seen a photographer inside the jail?
I think I may have seen a photographer in the jail. I'm not sure. We take photographs of officers, and we've done things on Facebook to publicize different activities.
Have you ever seen a Record Eagle photographer inside the jail?
I've not.
Have you ever seen a 7 and 4 news reporter inside the jail?
I've not personally, no.
Okay. With regard to the witness statements, redacting the names of the witnesses, the jail security issue, and redacting the videos or refusing the videos, and the frank communications, did you engage in a balancing test before you made a decision, or before the sheriff's office made a decision?
Check to the foundation.
If you mean by balancing test, if you're saying that the public's right to know is stronger than our right to keep it out of the public's
Yeah.
purview, we've talked about it a lot. We had many conversations about it, specific to the different exemptions.
Do you know if the video cameras in the jail are numbered sequentially?
I don't know that.
Do you know if the video cameras in the jail have the numbers printed on them?
I don't know that.
You don't know either way.
I don't know either way.
So, did you review the answer to our complaint before it was filed?
I'm sorry?
So, you know, we filed a complaint in court, right?
For the FOIA?
Over the FOIA issue.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Have you seen that before?
I've seen that, yes.
This document right
Yes.
here? Okay. Are you aware that the sheriff's office filed an answer to that in court?
I assume we did,
Okay.
through our attorneys.
Yeah. So we had a previous witness run off with my answer, so I'm going to show it to you on my iPad here. Give me one moment.
Would you like me to get it back?
Oh, it's just a copy.
Okay.
Unless it's sitting out here, no, we're good. That's a PDF of it that was, I think, e-filed by your lawyer.
I'm familiar with what these are,
Okay.
answers. Yes.
What was the question? Has he seen it?
Yeah.
Have I seen
That.
our response?
Yes.
No, I did not read it.
Okay.
I know there was one filed through our attorney's
Okay.
office.
Do you know if anyone at the sheriff's office read it prior to filing it?
I don't know.
Well, so I'm just curious about some of the questions, and maybe you don't know the answer, or some of the answers. Maybe you don't know why, but for example, I alleged in my complaint that you guys didn't provide any affidavits in response to the FOIA request. And the sheriff's office answer was neither admit nor deny because you didn't have enough information to answer that. Do you know why that was the response?
No. I still don't know if we filed affidavits.
Fair enough. Who would know if you gave us an affidavit?
I would assume our attorneys.
Would Ms. Fountain know if affidavits were supplied in response to a FOIA request?
I don't know what Ms. Fountain knows.
That's fair. All right, I'll pass the witness.
I don't have any questions.
Yay, we're done. Let's go off the
So,
record.
the record, the deposition is now concluded. The time is